The Borobudur Temple by Sheldon Gomes for Religion 373. The aim of religious architecture is to make transparent the boundary between matter and mind, flesh and the spirit. This is a quote by Norman Alice Kuntz. The underlying purpose of the Borobudur is to meld the physical aspects of the devotee with their metaphysical aspects of their faith in a transcending experience. Architectural design values are an integral component regarding the purpose of this building. As such, these values influence architects with making decisions regarding the final form of the building. The physical shape refers to the overlying shape of the building or temple. In the case of the Borobudur Temple, the overlying shape is that of a three-dimensional mandala. The path taken by the visitor. This refers to the path a devotee must walk on while visiting the Borobudur. As it is a solid structure, there's no way to enter it. As such, the visitor must walk the corridors on each individual level. Additionally, there's no choice in what path can be taken by the visitor. There is only one. But what you attain and gain from traversing the path is up to the individual. Manipulation of light. Light is a symbolic element of life. It's used to represent ideas and feelings. Light signifies wisdom, safety, cleanliness. Mirroring this, the lack of light is symbolic of chaos, terror, and confusion. Light and darkness are universal metaphors, and they transcend culture and education. The manipulation of space. Space is a central part of human existence. Space can invoke different feelings based on cognitive processes. Large spaces can invoke a feeling of insignificance or grandeur, whereas small spaces can invoke feelings of intimacy or claustrophobia. Finally, there are relief carvings. Carvings on the walls of the Borobudur are used to convey different Buddhist teachings and concepts. The empty spaces of walls were used by the architects as a means to add more meaning and understanding to the structure. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's a quote by Aristotle. And the Borobudur has multiple design values that work together in a synergistic fashion in an attempt to guide a devotee to the attainment of enlightenment. Though these design values work separately, together they have an even greater influence on the visitor. Each architectural design value is used in conjunction with another to guide visitors to a greater understanding of Buddhist philosophy, cosmology, and religion. The physical shape. The Borobudur is shaped as a three-dimensional mandala. Mandalas are used in both Hindu and Buddhist religions to represent the universe. The center is the final destination for an individual on a spiritual journey. In the Borobudur Temple, the center is the main stupa on the top of the structure. As such, the Borobudur can be said to be a representation of the cosmos made physical. It's a representation of the universe as a whole. There's an entrance on each side of this monument, and these entrances are the physical representations of the cardinal points found in the universe. The monument is a metaphor for the human manifestation in the world, and through the use of the mandala as an object for meditation, it guides the visitor to the center. Squares and circles. The architectural features reflect the belief in sacred geometry. Squares and circles represent formlessness and form, respectively. The square shape that is found by the walls of the temple, that is formed by the walls of the temple at the base, and the 5 middle terraces represent the physical form of man, as they have given up desire but not the physical form or name. The geometry of a square reflects this, as it has form with edges and corners. The circular shape that is formed by the walls of the temple at the top, so the stupa and the 3 underlying circular forms beneath it, represent the physical form of man, as they have given up desire, their physical form, and their name. The geometry of a circle reflects this teaching, as there are no edges or corners. A circle represents a void, a cycle of life ending with death, a continuum, and enlightenment in certain forms of Buddhism. The base of the Borobudur temple represents Kamatatu. It is represented by the square shape at the base, in addition to the terraces that are built one upon another. Kamatatu is the realm of earthly desire. This is represented by the hidden relief sculptures found at the base of the temple. Following the base are the 5 square terraces above it. These 5 square terraces represents Rapadhatu. Rapadhatu represents the realm of form. Here, believers have cast aside their earthly desires that are tied to their name and earthly form. Finally, above the square terraces is the trunk of a cone which sits on top. This trunk is formed by 3 circular platforms which represent Arupadhatu. This is the realm of formlessness. Here, devotees are no longer bound to their desires, form, or name. The large stupa on the top represents nirvana, which is the goal of attaining enlightenment. Paths are a central concept in the Buddhist faith, and the Borobudur temple reflects this. A visitor at the base of the temple is unable to see the top. This is the reflection of their life, as they are not able to see the end goal of enlightenment. Rather, similarly to circumnavigating the temple stage by stage, a devotee is able to see the final goal of attaining enlightenment as they progress further in their faith. A visitor performs a clockwise circumambulation of the monument, circling it, advancing up a stage with every full rotation around the structure. As the Borobudur temple is a solid structure, it cannot be entered. Therefore, the path around and through the monument is integral to the visit. Circumnavigating the temple is symbolic to traversing the path to nirvana in a physical form. The path of enlightenment is not a direct one. Similarly, the path to the top central stupa of the Borobudur is not direct either. The devotee must walk around the temple step by step through the lower realms first on their journey to the top. This reflects the devotee's path, which they must endeavor to make on their quest to enlightenment. The gradual transition between the levels is a physical representation of the path to bodhisattvahood, not all at once, but rather a slow change reflected in the architecture of the Borobudur. By way of gradual change, traversing the temple one level at a time, slowly reflecting on the carvings, and making one's way to the center and the top, they attain a feeling of enlightenment. The path represented by the Borobudur temple is one that illuminates a central Buddhist tenet. The believer must move both up to enlightenment and inwards within themselves. This is mirrored by the structure's path, moving both up and towards the center where the highest stupa is located. Physical space and light. The use of space can invoke numerous feelings. Large spaces can make you feel alone and insignificant, and small spaces can invoke feelings of intimacy or meaning. The Borobudur Temple uses these mediums to invoke feelings and convey messages to the visitors. The Temple of Borobudur's design uses elements that invoke cognitive thought patterns that transcend multiple cultures. It is a series of terraces built one on top of another. The lower terraces, square in their shape. The path a visitor must walk to circumnavigate the temple is contained in the narrow corridors around the base. The corridor is made by the two walls, one on either side. Mirroring space, the manipulation of light can invoke feelings and be quite symbolic. Bright light can symbolize knowledge and understanding, while dim, unlit areas can symbolize confusion and ignorance. The long, narrow corridors, tall walls, and busy wall carvings ensure that natural light from the sun is blocked for those visitors in the hallways of the lower terraces. Light is a fundamental symbol for all cultures. It is universal in nature, and as such is understood by all humans. Light is symbolic of good, intelligence, and the divine. The lack of light is symbolic of chaos, evil, confusion, and spiritual darkness. The lack of light in the narrow corridors of the lower terraces of the Borobudur is symbolic of the lack of enlightenment in the realms of Kamatatu and Rapahatu. The manipulation of both space and light can be seen in these lower corridors. The relief carvings on the sides of these lower terraces depict stories of human suffering and other Buddhist tales. The sculptures are extremely detailed, and they convey the overall message of suffering without enlightenment, and through the subsequent upper layers, transcendence. By way of numerous carvings and the high walls, there's a lack of light. This tight space and lack of light causes a certain level of claustrophobia in the visitor. This is intentional in nature, and the claustrophobia represents the confusion of regular existence. Additionally, these narrow corridors represent the narrow-mindedness and suffering of human life. As the visitor climbs higher through the temple, the carvings illustrate how Buddha was able to exit the suffering by attaining enlightenment. The number of carvings on the walls reduces as one moves further up the path to enlightenment. Similarly, the walls reduce in size, thereby reducing the feelings of claustrophobia felt by the devotee. Once the visitor reaches the summit, they are met by meditating Buddha sculptures, along with an unrestricted view of the surrounding countryside. These tranquil views and the expanse of space leads the devotees to subconsciously be at ease due to the removal of a claustrophobic stimulus. This feeling of ease is a simulation of the state of enlightenment and nirvana. The message of attaining enlightenment through following a path to higher states of consciousness is anchored in the use of the Borobudur's temple, the Borobudur Temple's height and views from the elevated vantage point. Unlike the shape of the Borobudur Temple, which changes gradually, the presence of light and space is sudden and abrupt. This space and light is experienced at the summit, and above is a picture of this, which is a representation of Arupatatu, It invokes a feeling of enlightenment in the visitor, symbolic to the enlightenment attained through meditation and the study of Buddha's teachings. Every level of the Borobudur temple is covered in relief carvings on the walls. These carvings are read in a counterclockwise fashion by the visitor in accordance to parikarma. Devotees read the carvings starting at the left of the east gate, circumnavigating the temple before ending the level on the right side of the gate. There are approximately 1,460 carvings covering the lower walls. They chronicle Buddhist teachings found in the Dharma, illustrate events of the Buddha's previous lives as told in the Jataka tales, and portray scenes from other Buddhist cosmological texts. The themes of these relief carvings are separated by the layers of the Borobudur temple. Scenes at the base are in regards to karmic law. They show actions and their consequences. The first set of panels found at the base are in regards to karma vibhanga. There are 160 panels regarding this, and they show the horrors of hell with the joys of heaven. Scenes of daily life are carved in these reliefs and are relatable to any 9th century visitor. They show the endless cycle of samsara, birth, life, and death, and illustrate the negative aspects of pain and suffering, and sadness, which is caused by desire. Along with these scenes are lessons from the Buddhist text regarding the way to end the cycle of samsara. The next set of panels is found on the first layer of the temple. Here, visitors view scenes from the Lalitavistara Sutra, which begins with the descent of Buddha from Tushita and concludes with the Buddha's first sermon at Deer Park. These scenes depict the birth of Buddha as Prince Siddhartha, and these relief carvings help the visitors of the temple understand the life the Buddha lived. The depiction of Buddha as a human reaching for enlightenment, much like the visitors, gives a feeling of relatability between the individuals as they look up into themselves. Along with the scenes from the Lalitavistara Sutra, there are depictions of the scenes from the Jataka tales and the Avindanas. These tales are stories about the previous lives of the Buddha, both in human and animal incarnations. Similarly, the Avindanas are stories of characters from Buddhist teachings that don't involve the Buddha. These carvings are an attempt to teach Buddhist lessons to the devotee. Finally, there are carvings covering the 3rd and 4th layers of the Borobudur. These carvings are in regards to the Grandavuha story, which is a story about a man named Sudhana who goes on a search to find wisdom and enlightenment. This is similar to the visitor of the Borobudur temple who has ventured to the monument in search of enlightenment. The story encompasses the core tenets of Buddhism and the lessons. By way of relief carvings, the visitor is exposed to these teachings and likely receives some knowledge. The carvings on the walls of the Borobudur temple convey messages and teachings from Buddhist cosmology. They're universal in nature due to their visual depictions of scenes from text rather than the written use of language. This is an attempt to allow both the literate and the illiterate devotee to attain some cosmological knowledge and receive lessons from stories. Any visitor, whether the intended 9th century devotee or an individual from this century, can see these relief carvings and understand the basic messages it conveys. This stems from the major tenet of Buddhism, its universality. It appeals to all and allows everyone to find enlightenment and peace.